Scythe Tleppo, Chapter 8, Freak. Sea Org members don't get much Scientology processing. Instead, they spend their days working for the corporation. At Flag, they live in shared apartments, even 14-year-old kids like me. A short while after the emancipation debacle, once everything had cooled down, I brought it up. "Mom, I'm starting to feel like I should join the Sea Org," I said. "No, yeah. I mean, it's a higher purpose. I think I can really do some good there." I pressed her buttons perfectly. She made some calls, and the very same day, I was at Flag, taking a few simple tests and checks. "Have you ever done LSD, PCP? Nope. Have you ever been involved with government intelligence agencies? Don't think so." The questions covered topics like debt assessment, spy work, and psychiatric institutionalization. I was in the clear, just a boy of 14. I was surprised how easy it was to get through the test, but a damning contradiction surprised me more. People can't join the Sea Org if they've done LSD or PCP? The purification rundown handles all the physical effects of drugs. The drug rundown handles all the mental and spiritual effects of drugs. Wait, why can't someone join the Sea Org if they've done LSD or PCP? Doesn't that mean the purification and the drug rundown doesn't work? Why can't these people see that? Am I crazy? These types of problems pulled my attention to them. I couldn't help it. I ignored the contradiction because I wasn't there to be a real Sea Org member in the first place. I signed a billion-year contract, non-binding, obviously, and it meant about as much to me as it would have to the law. I knew even though I was going to come back next lifetime, I would have a choice to honor the contract or ignore it. I didn't know how long I would be in the service at all, really. The Sea Org rationed me a small apartment, which was unusual for a single person, and a $20 per week allowance. My uniform was light blue and navy blue. I started on my orientation courses, meant to introduce me to the procedures of the organization, and got to work nearly immediately. I was posted in the office of the Senior Case Supervisor International at the Flag Land Base, in the Flag Service Organization. What all that means in human language is I was part of what's considered the bottom rung on the highest ladder in Scientology. I didn't care one bit about Scientology anymore, though I believe the texts were true, or at least mostly true. Scientology was instrumental in severing ties with my father's side of the family, and was slowly degrading the remaining members on my mother's side. It was complicit in the circumstances surrounding my grandfather's death. I didn't care if the texts were correct. I was already done with the Scientology organization, the corporation. My indifference to it made it easier to join somehow. The Senior Case Supervisors International's job was to make the ultimate decisions about how to treat people with complex issues. He was like the judge or director of what next steps were for high-ranking or particularly important people. Who is this legendary figure, this top-level international case supervisor of the Flag Land Base in the Flag Sea Organization? I wonder what he's going to be like. Did he know Ron? Before I met him, I pictured a super genius, capable of getting things done. The ultimate in snap and pop, the Sea Org's term for robotic efficiency. I thought of how much dedication it must have took him to keep his statistics up over the years. When I did finally meet him, I was surprised to find he came off as clumsy. He was meager and meek. He didn't seem to possess deep knowledge to me. He was just a man surrounded by stacks of papers and folder piles. Nothing about him made me feel he was excellent at anything. This person is a top expert of Dianetics and Scientology. The first time I met him, I looked around for signs that I was being pranked. I thought for a moment the whole experience was some kind of test. But that was just my mind trying to compensate for how easily it was to get into the Sea Org. It was no test that was the real him. I worked for the guru, operating under the charitable assumption that he knew his stuff, and I was just bad at detecting excellence. I ran around the Scientology building each day doing errands, picking things up, receiving communications, and so on. I was an assistant or runner of sorts. I was able to feign the snap and pop culture of the Sea Org easily. I already knew what it was all about: statistics, rules, following policies. Those things I could do. I played the part during the day to earn the freedom at night. After work, I had colleagues to hang out with who were similar in age to me. There was no drinking, drugs, or partying, only hanging out and blowing off steam. Our luxury was buying cigarettes from the convenience store inside the residence. I frequented a coffee shop called Mother's Milk when my colleagues couldn't hang out. I developed a crush on a girl in the Sea Org named Holly. She had beautiful teeth, a positive attitude, and the same name as my first girlfriend. My closest friend there, Harley, also worked in the case supervisor's office. I didn't develop much of a crew other than that and was mostly alone. The general staff ate in a mess hall, military style. Everyone earned mere scraps for pay and knew to keep heads down in public. Bigwigs were everywhere, and we were pond scum around those parts. While I ate, I pondered how different the Sea Org was than I expected it would be. I found it quite strange, for example, knowing we were higher up than almost all other staff members on the globe. And yet here at Flag we weren't anything special at all. We are never going to see those other orgs anyway, so what difference does being a senior to them make? Thought I was going to go around and consult for other cities or something. It was as if no matter how high in Scientology someone gets, they're still a nobody. I didn't really care, though. I wasn't there to clear any planets. I was there to experience independence. When I wasn't on duty, I spent hours writing poetry and deep thoughts in a notebook. My apartment was completely empty, and I had no plans to change that. I slept on the floor with a blanket. When I needed a break, I roamed around the buildings. The environment was fake, plastic. It was built up to look extravagant, everything gold and posh, but it was all a lie for the public, the people who paid for services. We Sea Org members didn't pay for anything, so we got the behind-the-scenes experience. Hard work, no money, long hours, and no privileges. When celebrities came to Flag, we couldn't talk to them. The culture in the Sea Org was that of keeping one's head down and working. When David Miscavige, the leader of Scientology, came, they cautioned us not to look at him. He had a whole lore around him. We heard rumors of people who looked at him winding up in trouble for sending him N theta, negative energy. So it was safer to keep our heads down and not rock the boat. When Scientology events happened, we set up chairs in the auditorium. We couldn't sit for the event and usually couldn't attend at all. When we could, we had to hide in the back by the doors and be sure to clear out before any public were headed to the exits. Anytime someone from the public asked us questions, we had to answer promptly and pleasantly. Our job included making Flag look like the Mecca of Scientology, the amazing theta, upstat world that Scientologists could come experience. I learned a little about corporate communication protocols, like in-baskets and statistics, and reporting lines, but all in all, I'd say the work experience was mostly useless. After only a couple of months, I'd had enough. I stopped showing up and asked to come home. I wrote it out of the Sea Org, which was easy for me, and I had no family left in the Sea Org and was new. It must have been obvious I didn't want to be there. Just left the Sea Org and didn't look back. I returned home to a mother who was borderline depressed about the outcome. I had really let her down, and she was massively disappointed in me. Being back at home strained our relationship further. I resisted the cycle of trying to get my mother's approval through Scientology. I had tasted freedom and developed a sense of independence. She wasn't changing, but I was. Misery was coming for me. I just didn't know it yet. The corporation sent my mother a freeloader's debt, a bill for courses I had done while working for them. I was only in for a few months, so it was under $3,000. Still, it made the situation worse. Came back during the summer, so there were no school to keep me occupied. Stayed in my room a lot and hung out with a neighborhood friend named Corey Kritzer. He was a Christian, which fascinated me. We spent hours talking about Christianity and his beliefs. Everything about it seemed so foreign and strange to me. There was a burning bush talking to people, and a guy split the ocean with a stick. That Jesus character, the one that Scientology clearly states never existed, formed the backbone of this strange religion. He died for all our sins, even the ones we haven't committed yet. This was fantasy to me, absolute fantasy. Even then, though, I was sure that there was no way Corey knew the real truth. I didn't look down on him, not like my family did, not how I used to, not like all Scientologists did. Somehow I felt he didn't know the truth about reality, and for the first time in my life, I didn't know either. I saw parallels between Christianity's beliefs and Scientology's teachings. I detected indicators that my worldview might have been as crazy as his, maybe crazier. He thought I was deeply interested in Christianity itself, but I was looking at a different angle. I was pondering new lines of thought. What if reality doesn't matter? What if I don't have to be right about everything? Is it possible to accept not knowing anything? Is this the missing piece from my family's psyche? Are they just desperate to be right about the meaning of life? We chatted about the core beliefs of Christianity from his point of view, the first intelligent Christian I had exposure to. They were very productive conversations. My room had a door that led outside. I left at night sometimes to meet with friends or just walk around. Corey was a good kid and didn't drink or smoke much. But while in the Sea Org, I got in touch with a girl who was at the Mace Kingsley Ranch in Palmdale, Dharma Free. She remembered me from back then, and we hung out a few times. She was older than me and still knew other kids from the ranch, so I hung out with them a few times too. One time they were drinking beer at someone's house, and soon enough, so was I drinking beer too for the first time. As disgusting as it tasted, I drank 2 40-ounce bottles and was having fun until I fell onto a table with bottles and ashtrays on it. No, even that was fun. The new school year was coming and my mother wanted me back into school. I wasn't that much into drinking and hanging out, and though the first time I drank was amusing, I was bored with nothing to do during the day. I fell deeper into a world of dark music and thoughts. I tried to wear black any chance I got. I was a freak, and people driving past me often shouted the word to me. I didn't mind. I knew by then I was different than most people. I didn't take pride in it, though I was looking for someone to bond with, someone like me. In August, my mother asked me if I remembered a kid that I had known, a Scientologist kid. Sure, I remember him, I confirmed. She told me he was enrolled in Light School, a nearby Scientology school. She had been trying to get me interested in going there for some time. Sure, sounds good. Better than sitting around alone all day. I agreed to enroll, then promptly forgot all about it. Near the end of August, she brought it up again, and I agreed to go again. Another friend to throw into the mix and something to do during the day. Sounds good. She told me I would start the first Monday in September. Monday, September 2nd rolled around and nothing was different. Hey, Mom. I thought I was supposed to start school today, I asked. Oh, they changed the first day to tomorrow, she told me. That night, I snuck out and hung out a little bit at Mother's Milk, where someone tried unsuccessfully to hypnotize me with a pendulum and some calm talking. The next day, nothing happened. Mom, what's going on? Isn't there school today? I was confused. She told me, you were out late last night. You need to get a full night of sleep to get your RUDs in before I could take you. RUDs means rudimentary requirements, normally reserved for Scientology auditing. Well-tested, fed, no drugs, no present-time problems. She was telling me I needed to get rest for school. I agree and stay in all night and get proper sleep. I didn't have anything planned anyway. She asked me again that night if I wanted to go, which was a bit off of character for her, and again I confirmed. The next morning, Wednesday, September 4th, 1996, I woke to a rustling on my bed. I felt like my mother was on my bed near my feet. I definitely feel someone. I looked down, but it wasn't my mother. It was Scott Hewlett, the security guard from the Mace Kingsley Ranch in Palmdale. Scott, the man who did Wally's bidding. Scott, the man who did Wally's bidding. The number one enforcer. The security guard who 6 years prior scrubbed me with a metal fence brush in front of all the children and staff. My eyes opened wide. Remember me, he asked. I couldn't tell if he was being serious. I was in shock and my mind was groggy. How did he get in our apartment? Am I dreaming? You're Scott? From the ranch, I mumbled. He said, pack up some clothing, pack up stuff you want to take. I slowly began placing some clothes into a red trunk, already opened on a table. Where are we going? I asked, but I already knew the answer. We're going to go back to the ranch. Don't worry, it's nothing like it was before. Wally isn't there anymore. It's totally different now. I didn't know what to say, so I was direct. I don't want to go back to the ranch. Don't worry, man. It's much better now. We're in New Mexico now. We have this amazing ranch. It's on 14,000 acres of wonderful forest. We go camping and hiking, and it's pretty fun, actually. He was reading from a script, an insult to my intelligence. He may have forgotten much about me, but I remembered everything about him. I knew he was lying, trying to trap me. Don't trust him, he's lying. Don't give in. Don't agree to anything. My mind was in a daze still. Put on my black shoes. They weren't Vans. They weren't Vans. They were some generic brand. I need to think. What should I do? Where's my mom? My trunk was half packed with Jennifer Crazy came walking in. "Hey, Nate," she said cheerfully. I recognized her immediately. She was a kid at the Palmdale Ranch. Is she working for them? I was shocked and terrified. How could she work for them now? She reiterated how great the ranch was and how I was going to love it. She said she was going to wait outside at the car and that our plane was taking off soon. I laid back on my bed as a wave of hope washed over me. Wait a second. This is America. You can't just come in here and kidnap me. I have rights. He's playing a mind game. He wants me to go willingly. Sat on my pillow with my back against the wall and my feet near him, seated at the bed's edge. I'm not going, I remarked. I knew I was safe. I was feeling relieved already. They had me going there for a second. There's nothing they can do. Oh, you're going, he snarled. Yeah, right. Have fun at the ranch, I said. Come on, let's go. The flight is leaving soon. Well, I won't be on it. Nathan, let's go. Have fun, dude. I'm not going. Yeah, you are. Come on, let's go. Really, have fun, man. See ya. I was cocky. Scott reached out and grabbed my foot, still laying on the bed. I kicked him in the face with my other foot. Good. Get the hell off me, I yelled. This made him angry. When Scott is angry, he's dead silent. He jumped on me and grabbed my arm. He twisted it all the way behind my back, quickly and powerfully. The pain surged through me immediately. I screamed out, Mom! 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 There was no reply. He grabbed me off the bed, my arm twisted so far back, it felt like my hand was behind my head. Mom! I yelled louder. He dragged me out through the hallway while I tried desperately to hold on to walls. Anything to stop myself. I kicked and screamed. I shouted again, Mom, get off me! Get the fuck off me! Mom! Mom! Again, there was no answer. Saw my mother as we reached the dining area. She had been at the dining table the whole time. She was smiling at me. I froze for a moment. Did they drug her? That was my first thought. Scott yanked me harder. Mom! What the fuck, Mom? She didn't stop smiling. She looked as if she was revealing a great truth to me in the moment. Her expression read now, you see what's going on? Now you get it? People are sick. On the table were some documents, some papers she was signing. Scott dragged me through the living room. In my panic, I lashed out my foot to knock over the aquarium, but missed it. I was out the front door. That was it. I was out of the apartment. I continued to struggle as Scott easily overpowered me and dragged me on. Someone noticed me, save me. I hoped desperately. Stop! Get off me! Fucking! I was desperate. No neighbors came out of their apartments. Jennifer was waiting for us outside. There was no one else around. They stuffed me into the back of the car, one security guard in the back, one in the front. Tried to kick out the car window, but Scott prevented me. When we arrived at the airport, there were 2 gun-wielding uniformed airport police officers there to help receive me. Wow. Apparently the ranch was working with the police on my pickup. Thank God the police can help kidnap children. Isn't that wonderful? Apparently the ranch, okay. Jennifer left us to pick up another kid as Scott, the 2 police officers, and I went through the airport together. They were my 3 escorts. Everyone in the airport looked at me like I was the Unabomber, as we walked right through the lines and straight to the plane. I asked Scott where the plane was going. I hoped he would say LA, where maybe I could run away, maybe find anyone that I knew to help me. We're going to Albuquerque, he said. Confused, I sat in my chair silently. Albuquerque was a city in Quebec, Canada. I knew that much. Didn't he say the ranch was in New Mexico? That's in Mexico. Isn't New Mexico the capital of Mexico? I didn't know where we were going. Is it Canada or Mexico? I was nervous and upset. I was scared to go back to the ranch, and I was furious at my mother for her betrayal. I was in shock. There were no police waiting at the Albuquerque airport when we landed. By then I was exhausted and defeated already. There was no need to fight anymore. We came out of the airport without any luggage to an enormous silver Ford F-350 diesel super cab pickup truck, which was waiting for us. Get in, Scott commanded. I complied with his demands. I already knew that the fight was over. Scott came in after me. I sat between him and the driver. The man driving was huge. He had a beard and flannel shirt, ostensibly some kind of modern-day cowboy. Hey, I'm Paul, he said. I'm Wally's nephew. Oh, fuck. Paul Gullett was the same size and similar build to Wally. He had a false smile with a false persona. He was no cowboy. He was a Scientologist and no nice guy. He was kidnapping me. 4 hours later, we arrived at the ranch. See what they do to the kids? It was nighttime by then. We passed through a vast, boundless forest and turned into a wide, open dirt area before pulling up to the barn the size of a castle. The hay bales inside were so high they didn't look real. Paul pulled out a military two-way radio and called in some radio jargon. A man came out of a small office inside the barn and looked inside the truck. Paul said, "You remember Nathan Rich, right?" The man looked at me briefly and said calmly, "Yeah, hey." I recognized him from the Palmdale Ranch as well, though I couldn't place him exactly. Somehow I knew his name already, Devin Carley, or DC for short. "Let's get you to the camp," Paul said. I didn't understand why he showed me to DC until much later. Devin was a night watch security guard. Paul wanted him to be able to recognize me in case I tried to run away. See how they just give the kids up? We drove through more darkness, dust, and dirt. I had been to Canada when I was younger. I visited Toronto with Sharon. I knew this was in Canada. I must have been wrong. We're in Mexico. Just look at all the dust. I asked about my clothes and belongings. Scott remarked, "Your mother is sending them out separately." We continued driving for another 15 minutes. Anything past the high beams faded into a blackness that doesn't exist in cities. A blackness of the woods. It was all around us. It's isolation. We drove on dirt roads through trees, their thick smell in the air. Occasionally Scott and Paul tried to say things to me, but I ignored them. The wafting forest fragrance reminded me of my grandfather's house. I was deep in thought and emotionality. I had no time for them, just dirt, trees, and the night. We pulled into a flat area at the bottom of a large hill, and they said more radio jargon over the military radios. See these fake military people? They make me sick. We sat quietly in the truck for a moment before a flashlight on the top of the hill appeared and came slowly down the hill toward us. A face illuminated. It was Scott's brother Ross, the largest enforcer from the Palmdale Ranch. He led me up an enormous hill with stairs of enormous rocks. Exhausted from the extremely long and stressful day, I struggled to keep up with him. "Wait up, wait," I called out. I felt utterly dependent on him. I thought I would be lost forever if I couldn't keep up. The truck drove off in a haze of dust behind us. It was just the two of us, climbing into the mountainous nightmare. I didn't understand where Scott and Paul drove off to, or why. I was out there with Ross. I was overwhelmed by the day and exhausted by the ordeal. "Where's your stuff?" he asked. "I don't have any. My mom sent my stuff out separately," I replied. I was annoyed again, thinking about my mother for even that long. How could she do this to me? I remembered the old ranch. I wish she had believed me about it. I just have to interject. I'm sorry. I don't think she cared about Nathan. That's my opinion. Did she believe me? Does she want that stuff to happen to me again? Wow, that is sad. We arrived at the top of the hill, more trees, more blackness. Ross always walked in front of me, which scared me. I knew that meant there was no reason to watch me anymore. I knew that meant there was nowhere for me to go, just like the MK Ultra. We arrived at a cabin in the middle of nothing. "Here, you can use this." He reached down to the ground, picked up a sleeping bag out of the dirt, and tossed it to me. Created a thick cloud of dust as it found my chest. I wanted to deny the bag, but it was cold. He led me into the cabin. A tiny metal stove burned. Wood, but looked like it was running low. That was the only light source other than his flashlight. "Get some sleep," he instructed. "Where?" I looked around in the darkness. He pointed his flashlight to a spot on the broken wooden floor, in another section of the cabin. Enclosed but away from the heat of the stove, I could see a few other sleeping bags with bodies in them. Everyone was already asleep. I laid out the sleeping bag on the cracked wooden floor, unsure if it would sustain my weight. In a way, I was just relieved to be getting some rest. He walked outside the cabin, and I already knew he would sit awake all night, watching. The cabin interior went black as the light source went with him. I lay down on my back inside the sleeping bag. My eyes saw only stars in the sky, yet I was inside a cabin. The experience was surreal and disorienting. How am I seeing stars right now? The woods were so quiet I missed the cicada's song. I felt a stillness in my soul, a stasis. I peered out at those stars, light years away from me. Where is the freedom in this universe? What is my destiny? How did I get on this torturous planet? What did I do to deserve? Do you take pride in your race? The question was so far from my reality. The words nearly didn't register. My head rotated slowly on the wooden floor toward the source of the voice, blackness. My eyes searched for movement, but could only stare through the walls to the trees. My head rolled back upwards to gaze at the star-filled sky. There was no roof to this cabin in the woods. The stars were like eyes peering back at me. I wondered if this was all life had to offer me, pain and betrayal. The exterior of my cheap borrowed sleeping bag felt cold on my arms, so I pulled them in to feel my body's heat. Not really, I replied to the unknown entity in the void. What manner of insanity am I in now? How long will this new nightmare last? The crackling of a fire somewhere outside the log cabin meant the security guard was here to stay. The sounds of the woods led me to sleep that night.